Okay. Hi, you're watching Dante's Boxing Nation.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So what Steven Espinosa just recently said at this Gervonta Tank Davis versus Lamont Roach press conference has completely shooken up the internet and completely pissed off Shakur Stevenson. Now, I'm going to get into Shakur Stevenson's rebuttal, but before I do, I want to play the clip of what Steven Espinosa said.
You know, there were preliminary discussions about the Shakur fight, early on, like back early, for 2024 before this was scheduled. Didn't get very far for reasons I won't go into. But
come on.
I just think there were, I'm not sure that the time was right. I think, what Shakur was looking for was something different than, he was looking for more of a long-term commitment other than just doing one fight, and so he's got his deal, he's getting busy, he's got a fight scheduled, and, maybe we'll pick up and do something there.
Now, you guys might recall when Calvin Ford, he said a while ago, we're sending Shakur Stevenson a contract, and it's going to be up to him if he signs it or not. Now, what you have to understand is when someone says we're going to send you a contract, what that really means is we're going to send you our terms. And if you agree to those terms, then we go to the next step, which is signing the contract. So to a certain extent, what Calvin Ford said pretty much corroborates what Steven Espinosa said in this clip. But Shakur is saying that these are all lies. Let me show you guys some of the many posts that Shakur put up in response to what Steven Espinosa said. I'm going to go ahead and read some of them. Fake story to make their side look good and have their fans running around pushing a false agenda. From what I had heard, niggas told me the fight wasn't ready yet. They were going to spin the block next year, as in 2025. I just didn't blast the shit, because that shit lame. Soon as niggas announce fights now, they start making up shit, and then it gets worse when it come from the higher up people. I know you want to believe that shit, but I never got no offer. That man is lying through his teeth, but for y'all agenda, keep pushing it, my guy. Not going to lie, the lies is getting out of hand. I wanted what? This don't even make sense, Steven. Nigga, I'm the B-side. I don't get to ask for another fight. Now, the first thing I want to say is that was my AI voice. The second thing I want to say is when you hear Shakur say, I'm the B-side, I don't get to ask for another fight. That's not true. When you're negotiating a fight, you can ask for whatever you want. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you can ask for it. And if you don't get it, you could say, okay, fine. Then I'm not going to take the fight. Being able to walk away from a fight puts you in a very powerful position as the B-side, especially when the A-side feels that they need you, which is exactly what Steven Espinosa was implying in this clip I'm going to play for you guys. Pay attention to what he says, and I'm going to break it down.
But aside from that, to be candid, those are the big names at 135. I know Tank has gone up to 140, and he would on occasion. He hasn't looked the best there. Overall, I think 135 is his best weight. So it would take a lot for him to get there. But I think, if we look at this, you take Shakur out of it, then there's a big drop-off at 135, to be completely honest. So, let's be clear, and I don't mean that as any disrespect to everybody else, but, in terms of household names and guys who will, at least on paper, are going to be a big challenge, it becomes more and more difficult.
So what Steven Espinosa just admitted as the A-side is they desperately need the Shakur Stevenson fight. Why? Because there's no other big names in that weight class, which is the exact same thing that Gervonta's trainer Kenny Ellis said. He said there's nobody else at 135. Shakur is the only one left. Of course, this was before the emergence of Keyshawn Davis. But when Steven Espinosa said this, he's basically letting us know that these are the conversations that they are having with Gervonta's team right now. You heard Espinosa say basically, if we don't get the Shakur fight, then we're going to have to look for fights at 140. But the problem is Gervonta did not look his best at 140. This is what Steven said. So once again, this proves what Shakur Stevenson said is completely inaccurate. The B-side can definitely ask for whatever they want to ask for. And Shakur knows this very well because Oscar Valdez was the B-side. And Oscar Valdez, he made sure he got whatever he wanted before he got in the ring with Shakur Stevenson, because Oscar knew deep down he was going to lose that fight. Now, I want to talk about how Gervonta made himself look really bad when he said that he doesn't need Shakur Stevenson, who has Shakur Stevenson fought. But before I get into that, I want to go back to some of the things that Shakur said in that post. Shakur said, from what I heard, Nick told me the fight wasn't ready yet. They was going to spin the block next year, as in 2025. So here's the first thing we need to know. Did they reach out to Shakur and his team, or did Shakur reach out to them? And it sounds to me the way Shakur put it is Gervonta's team reached out to him. And if that is the case, why would they reach out to Shakur just to tell him we gonna spin the block and talk about this fight next year? Even if they did contact Shakur and say that, then that means there were other things that were discussed in that conversation. Meaning Shakur Stevenson, he had some kind of stipulations. Because a fight of this magnitude, it wouldn't make sense that they would just reach out to Shakur and Shakur would just agree to everything, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, they just say, you know what, Shakur, we changed our mind. We're just going to spin the block and try to renegotiate this fight next year. The only way that scenario would make a little bit of sense is if it was Shakur's people that reached out to Gervonta's team. Okay, so now I want to talk about what Gervonta just recently said when he was saying things like, he doesn't need to fight Shakur Stevenson. Who has Shakur fought? Now, instead of using that approach, what I don't understand is how come Gervonta didn't just come out and let the public know we've reached out to them? How come he didn't say the same thing that Steven Espinosa said? I mean, none of us really know what Gervonta is thinking deep down when he says things like this, but I do wonder if it's his pride. It could be possible that Tank just doesn't like to call out fighters as the A side. But then again, I do remember leading up to the Frank Martin fight, Gervonta, he was asked by Ellie Setback. Ellie asked him, who do you want next? And he said he wanted Shakur. The only difference is when he was asked that question, he wasn't doing a scrum with all the reporters.
Is there anyone you want to fight?
Yeah, Shakur.
Why?
Because he talked a lot.
And what happens in that fight?
I stopped him. How you gonna do it, man?
Now, something else Gervonta said that really surprised a lot of people is he's going to retire. He's planning on retiring next year. But this confused a lot of fans because right before the Frank Martin fight, Gervonta, he announced that he had a 6 or 7 fight deal, which means the Frank Martin fight was only 1 fight out of that deal. So if what Gervonta said is true, then that means the Lamont Roach fight would only be the 2nd fight. And let's just say it's a 6 fight deal, not a 7 fight deal. We know Gervonta is not going to fight 5 times next year, so it seems highly unlikely that he will retire next year. But going back to Gervonta and what he said about not fighting Shakur Stevenson and why. When people ask Gervonta, why are you fighting Lamont Roach? I don't understand, why doesn't Gervonta ever tell them, because we were supposed to fight Lomachenko, or we were supposed to fight other names, but they all turned down the fight. Because that would be the actual truth. In that interview, Steven Espinosa was basically saying the only fight to make at 135 in terms of the biggest fight to make is Gervonta versus Shakur. Right after he said that, he then brought up Lamont Roach and he said, the Lamont Roach fight, he said it's kind of like the Canelo fights in 2024 when he fought Berlanga and Munguia. But it's actually the contrary for Gervonta, because when it comes to Gervonta preferred to fight the stiffer, better competition. Gervonta wanted to fight Lomachenko. Because Lomachenko turned down the fight and other people turned down the fight, Gervonta was left with no other options. This was a backup plan. For Canelo, Munguia, and Berlanga, those were the front runners. They weren't the backup plan. Canelo wasn't looking for the biggest fight. He wasn't looking for the toughest challenge. He was looking for the easiest challenge, like he's been doing pretty much his entire career. I think all of us could agree that if Gervonta and David Benavidez were naturally the same weight in the same weight class, it would be Gervonta that would be aggressively pursuing that fight. And I'm not saying David would have turned it down. I'm just saying Gervonta knows and the world knows that David Benavidez's style would be tailor-made for Gervonta to get a very impressive knockout. And we know Shakur would be chasing that David Benavidez fight as well if they were naturally in the same weight class. So how come Canelo doesn't feel the same way about Benavidez that Gervonta would feel about him? We all know the answer to that. Something else we all know is Gervonta and everyone else knows that when it comes to Shakur Stevenson, his style would be much more difficult to figure out than a David Benavidez or even a Canelo style. At the end of the day, there's no doubt about it that Gervonta and Shakur, they really need each other. This is arguably the biggest fight in boxing right now. And despite what Gervonta is saying about not fighting Shakur, it's good to know that Steven Espinosa is making it very clear that that is a priority for them to make that fight or other big fights at 140. And even if Gervonta does end up fighting against Ryan Garcia at 140, first of all, Ryan has already admitted that he can't come down to 140. And it's hard for me to believe that Gervonta is going to go all the way up to like 143 or 145 to fight Ryan. But even if that fight did come to fruition, according to the 6 or 7 fight deal that Gervonta says he has, he would still have about 3 or 4 fights left on that deal. And I don't think those 3 or 4 fights are going to include a Keyshawn Davis or some of the champions at 140.
About a new deal, 7-fight deal, which is music to the ears of many boxing fans. Get to see you in action for several more years. What type of names are we talking about in those 7 names?
Whoever you name, they could be in it.
If I name some fighters, can you say yes or no?
Yep.
Shakur Stevenson.
Yep.
Ryan Garcia.
Yep.
Devin Haney.
Yep.
Isaac Cruz.
Yeah, but there's 2 people I already beat already, but yeah. You'll see, bro.
Yeah.
That deal that I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh, that's
That
the
deal,
a part of
that
this.
deal, he don't know about that yet. But that's bigger than his deal.
Damn. Wow.
And I'm just releasing
This is
it.
exclusive. That's exclusive. Bigger than Floyd deal?
Yeah.
About a new deal, 7-fight deal, which is music to the ears of many boxing fans. Get to see you in action for several more years. What type of names are we talking about in those 7 names?
Whoever you name, they could be in it.
If I name some fighters, can you say yes or no?
Yep.
Shakur Stevenson.
Yep.
Ryan Garcia.
Yep.
Devin Haney.
Yep.
Isaac Cruz.
Yeah, but there's 2 people I already beat already, but yeah. You'll see, bro.
Yeah.
That deal that I'm talking about?
Yeah. Oh, that's
That
the
deal,
a part of
that
this.
deal, he don't know about that yet. But that's bigger than his deal.
Damn. Wow.
And I'm just
This
releasing
is
it.
exclusive. That's
Yeah.
exclusive. Bigger than Floyd deal?
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys about Issa Israel Law Firm. It is a full-service legal practice based in Denver, Colorado, an emerging hub for combat sports and high-altitude training. If you're a fighter inside or outside of the ring and you need a law firm you can trust to fight for you, visit thefighterfirm.com or email help@iilawfirm.com. Legal representation is usually limited to plaintiffs or defendants in Colorado, but iFirm can help anyone in the world with trademarking their business name, logos, and U.S. immigration issues. This brother has been my attorney for a while and helped guide me through all kinds of business and civil issues, so make sure you guys go to thefighterfirm.com. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, fever blisters, diabetic ulcers, this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.